very good afternoon. It's really a privilege to be moderating this very important session. We've been hearing a number of discussions on the vision that has been set out there, the infrastructure needs that are there. We've also heard about how there are certain constraints on public finances, and that's why we need a lot of private financing coming in. So we have a very esteemed panel here today. But I'm first going to request Shri Rajat Kumar Saini, who is the CEO of and Managing Director of the National Industrial Corridor Development. Mr. Saini will be making a short presentation, and then we will then continue with discussions with the rest of the panel. Mr. Saini, if I may request you to come to the podium and make a presentation.
Thank you so much. So a very good afternoon to the esteemed panel as well as the audience. I think the session is on innovative financing strategies groups in effective public financing. So I'm sure all the panelists have very significant their experiences and their knowledge, and with which they will contribute to the session. I will just give a brief overview of how we try to do it in industrial corridor, that is the industrial areas that are being developed all across India. So when we are talking of innovative public finance strategies, there can be multiple levels of collaboration. The most famous one is PPP, but I'll take one or two steps back. First thing that any government can try to do or is doing is, first, rather than just only one department doing it, we try to collaborate with multiple departments. That is something which is being called the whole of government approach. I believe that is also an innovation, because there are a lot of inefficiencies involved because of working in silos, and those silos are being broken. The second level is collaboration between Government of India and state government, where multiple projects where state government gives land, Government of India gives finance, or other things, as well as investment promotion. All these things in collaboration are being done. This also pools resources and creates economies of scale. Third thing is obviously public-private partnership. In public-private partnership also, yes, there is a famous model of where you bid out the projects, get the concessionaires, and then there is a revenue sharing or viable gap funding. Apart from that, there is also a model of joint venture, which is quite innovative, but the successful examples of joint venture are much less. So there is a Sri City or a Vizag Pharma City, or there is ITPL in Bangalore, there is one SITP in Chennai. So there are examples where such joint ventures have come up, and the financing, so private sector brings its expertise, public sector brings sometimes funds, sometimes land, etc., etc. Sometimes government also try to give impetus to a particular scheme or project. They allow the user department to collect those charges or cess on their own. This helps to focus the efforts and focus the finances for that particular project, because government always has multiple priorities, and all priorities cannot be satisfied at the same time. So this is also things are done. All the models are working in India, whether at Government of India level or state governments or in public-private partnership. We have had successes and failures, and because we are in Andhra, and in general, I feel that South India has been much more successful in creating those models and in making those models successful. And we hope to see that in next 1 or 2 decades, financing of public or the public-private partnership projects will be driven not just by public financing, but there is the way India is growing, there is a significant interest from private investors, domestic and international, and that is how the financing problems or the critical gaps will be addressed in coming 1 or 2 decades. Thank you so much for listening to me and giving attention for 5 minutes where I could give my thoughts. Thank you.
Question, and this is regarding the Bhogapuram International Airport. It's been seen as a big success, PPP-related success. What I think we'd be very interested to hear from you, sir, is what are the key financial and regulatory lessons that we can take away, especially from the perspective of designing future projects?
You are asking the GRK Bob.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So if you look at it, the GMR group as the PPP projects, so we have started our journey more than 20 years back. So we have started with the Hyderabad airport, then we've developed the Delhi airport, then we completed the Goa, and now Bhogapuram airport. So the Bhogapuram airport, if you look at it, the way the concession out has been done, entire financing has been done through institutions which have shown a lot of interest basically because of PPP projects, public-private partnership projects. We were able to secure a very good financing based on the project viabilities. And we have also invested more than 30% by way of equity, more than 1,100 crore rupees. And the debt has been done about 3,200 crore rupees. And this airport is the state of art, which is coming up. We have signed the concession agreement. We have started the construction in December 2023 and supposed to be completed in December 26, but we are 6 months ahead of the project completion. As of today, we have completed almost 80% of the infrastructure work. This is going to be the gateway to Andhra Pradesh. This infrastructure, which is, we are building a capacity of 6 million, whereas currently Vizag is operating only 3 million capacity. We are building up 6 million on a 2,200 acres of land. And we are really thankful to the government for providing a lot of support by way of the infrastructure facilities, connecting roads, water, electricity connection, everything. This project is going to be the backbone for the entire Andhra Pradesh, especially industrial city like Vizag. The current airport is Chocobar. It doesn't have a capacity to expand. And with this new infrastructure coming up to Vizag, we are hoping that this will be one of the biggest driver for the growth of the Vizag as well as the nearby districts. So coming to the financing, this being an PPP project and a concessionary model, we were able to secure a very good financing at a very competitive pricing from the market. So we have also got a lot of interest from the international market, but we didn't go for it because the domestic markets are very deep pockets now. We were able to raise the finances, and the project is getting completed by next year, July. We are aiming to start operations 6 months ahead. So this is what from GMR side, and we are expecting this is going to be one of the growth drivers for the entire Vizag as well as the nearby districts. This is what from our Bhogapuram Airport project side.
Thank you for that very comprehensive discussion and lessons for the future. Thank you, Mr. Babu. The next question is going to be for Shri Akhilesh Kumar Dixit. He's the CEO of EESL. And the question is, from EESL's experience, what do you see are the key challenges in designing public finance models that can support large-scale energy efficiency and sustainability projects?
Thank you. From EESL perspective, we have gained a lot of experience. We have some good experiences, and we have burnt our fingers also in financing the projects. The problem in financing of, if we restrict to energy efficiency projects, earlier we had this CapEx model. In CapEx model, the paying capacity of ULBs, there are without payment security mechanism, you end up with a large number of dues, like we have a dues of more than 4,000 crore rupees, which is a very big amount. So biggest problem in energy efficiency projects is there is a huge requirement of capex. More than 2 lakh crore rupees can be invested, and now we are talking about ESCO model, RESCO model, and carbon trading also did not pick up. So we had very bad experience when we designed some projects where we thought that we will recover the money from carbon trading. So that was also a huge loss. So going forward, I think since there is a huge potential in India, like we are in AP, we are talking about huge industrialization, and MSME sector, we have signed MOU here, and we are trying for all over India. So the real problem is that who will invest the money and how the money will be recovered. And so there are investors, but the real issue is that the payment security mechanism is required, then only any bank or any financial institution, which people are here. Otherwise, the financing of projects is very, very tough for energy efficient projects. There is I have come from power sector, so the financing was very easy because we had a regulator, we had bank guarantees, but here there is no surety. So without surety, I think financing is very, very tough, and even the people with deep pockets have not entered in this field. So, but this is a most critical field, and today only we are going to open the tender of 10,900 e-buses for 8 cities, and there also a lot of representation was there from the Tata Motors and all the big manufacturers that we cannot finance this amount of money at our own balance sheet. So I think we need to have some payment security mechanism for energy efficient schemes, and then the only we can think of real energy transition from traditional to green, and power saving can be done.
Thank you, sir. I think your point gels well with the point made in one of the earlier sessions about the predictability of returns. Until that's going to come, and there's an important time element there also, it's going to be difficult to see the big investments coming in. I'm going to turn now to Mr. Andre Pizarro. He's a manager of public sector clients at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Mr. Pizarro, from AIIB's perspective, what financing gaps do you observe in the financing infrastructure ecosystem in India? What types of models have you seen working in other regions that could be brought to India?
Thank you very much. I take in the question the word ecosystem, not just gap in the sense of financial gap, the whole system. And I was very pleased to hear the discussion this morning, and particularly the AP link concept, because in my opinion, that is hinting at some of the gaps the ecosystem has, not only in India, but also in the rest of the world. And if you allow me a little bit of history so that we can assess what are those gaps, is that in the early 80s in infrastructure, there was a reform, an important reform, whereby the infrastructure sectors and subsectors were sought to be segregated so that components or elements of the sectors could be open to competition, so that with that competition we attract private sector financing and efficiencies due to that competition. In the transport sector, which is my area of expertise, this came about in each of the subsectors. In ports, the landlord model came about, and as you know, the landlord model is there is an entity that owns the port, but there are concession of the terminals or other activities. The idea being that the competition, even between the terminals and among other ports, will create efficiencies, okay? In the railway sector, the famous reform in Britain is the segregation of the tracks from the operating system to introduce operators that could compete with British Railway. The idea being, again, efficiencies, etc., due to that competition. In the road sector, there was introduction of concessions, so the highways that could have high frequencies would have earn enough profit to attract private tech sector funding, independently of what happened in the network around. And in airports, the same thing. There was a dissociation of the airport as an entity, a profit-making entity, irrespective of what happened to the airlines. This is the ecosystem we have today. And the hints this morning are that although that did bring efficiencies, but I could give you some caveats in each of the subsectors, what it also brought is a lack of coordination between each of the subsectors, because each of the elements is profit-seeking or efficiency-seeking, irrespective of what happens around. For example, I know countries where the landlord model and the liberalization of ports is such that you can have, hundreds of port terminals along a coast, and this brings no scale efficiencies. So the whole reform, what it has done is subordinated efficiency due to competition from scale. And this goes again to what was said this morning of looking to create a logistics system, a transport systems, rather than individual efficient nodes that at the end may be a barrier to what the outcome that is being sought. Another small example, I worked in a small country in Latin America where the logistic costs of the efficiency of the ports were $150 per TEU, per container, if you like. And the land transport cost of the highway, $150 more or less. The maritime freight of that TEU going from there to the destination port was $3,500 per TEU. So we are looking to set up an efficient logistics system where nations and governments have a say, but at the end, there's also the maritime leg that's very important. The maritime leg, sometimes the cost is higher than the land cost. And the only way to reduce that cost is the port to have scale. If the port does not have scale, there's no way you can bring the cost down, because the cost of the TEU will depend on the size of the ship that comes to the port, and that depends on the volume you have. But if the reform is such that ports have to compete amongst, you'll never get the scale. So I'm giving you this as an example of a logistics system has to be integrated, has to be coordinated, and I hope this AP Link holding does this. But I see this as the main ecosystem, as the question asked, gap in India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So key takeaway for me, at least, really is there's an institutional requirement for coordination. And without that, the ecosystem is not going to.
I'd say it's institutional, but it's also policy and reform-based. If we're looking at efficiencies, and I understand we have to bring the private sector to finance because the financing gap is large, but if we bring it in that manner, where in fact what we're doing, and a lady said it in the morning, where the railway is competing with the highway and ports are competing amongst each other, there will never be sufficient scale to make the final cost lower. And I say, somebody said in the morning that the landlord model in ports has been very successful. I challenge that a little bit, not totally. The 10 largest ports in the world are not landlord ports. They're Chinese ports, and Singapore are state-owned, municipal or government-owned port. The largest port in Europe is Rotterdam, it's municipal. So we have to start thinking that transport is a system, logistics is from beginning to the destination, and what the profits of the different segments make may be to the detriment of the final outcome.
Point well taken. Let's move to Mr. Kuroki Sota. He's the representative for the Japan Bank of International Cooperation. Mr. Sota, JBIC has been a long-standing partner in India's infrastructure development. What do you think are some key lessons that can be drawn from Japan's experience in ensuring sustainable finance and PPP models for infrastructure development?
So JBIC is a Japanese export credit agency, and its mission is to bridge Japanese technologies with global economic development. So in India, JBIC has utilized what we call a Green Anti program and has promoted India's energy transition. So in this program, there's two keys. One is to mobilize Japanese investors' risk appetite, and the second is to mobilize Japanese private financiers. And the second pillar is to build a partnership with Indian public financial institutions and leveraging its expertise in each field, in each sectors. So let me take one example, the example of our collaboration with Power Finance Corporation. So we have this credit line with Indian public financial institution called PFC, and we have provided a loan to one waste-to-energy project in Pune, Maharashtra. So generally, it is challenging for private financial institutions to provide loans to such waste-to-energy projects due to its relatively low economic viability. But JBIC has been able to provide flexible and competitive finance to this project through our collaboration with PFC. And in this project, Japanese engineering company, Hitachi Zosen, which is now called Canadavia, was successfully collaborated with Indian concessionaire Anthony Lala. So, like this example, JBIC has built a relationship with Indian counterparts, and other examples include joint fund with NIIF, National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, and our part investment in National Industrial Corridor and Development Corporation, where Mr. Rajat Kumar Sahni who just addressed earlier, assumes the role of CEO. So, yeah, from JBIC's experience, we think it is essential that ECAs like JBIC orchestrates collaboration between Japanese foreign investors and host countries' governmental institutions. Thank you.
Let me move on to Shri Palash Vastav, who's Managing Director at IIFCL. So from IIFCL's long perspective in this space, what do you see as some key gaps in the Indian public financing ecosystem? And how can we introduce innovative financing models to bridge the gaps that we see in financing for large-scale infra projects?
I think, we are in AP, and AP is facing FRBM challenges, and development finance has been restrained. Even the projects which have been rolled out are a little muted in terms of, obviously the ambition is there, but how do we get these projects going? So I think the first and fundamental, I'd start with the, let's say the principles. The first principle is that in development finance also, it is now emerging that tax as the basis of development finance is not the most appropriate thing. Because if user charges or say PPPs actually are seen to allocate these resources much better, because user charges lead to more, let's say, effective, focused delivery of projects, which is something which is very, very important in a developing country like India. The second is that the assets are maintained, the assets are maintained through a whole life cycle rather than, just become capex heavy. The second point that I would like to really make in the context of, again, Andhra Pradesh is that, when you are stuck with, FRBM situation, then what is the alternative to, fund even PPPs? Because you don't have enough money for viability gap funding, you don't have enough money for hybrid annuity models, which are the proven models which have been, working across the infrastructure or development space. So I think we at IIFCL have innovated so that more and more states can actually benefited from a mezzanine or a subordinated debt framework. So it's really simple that on behalf of the state, we actually, instead of the state having to give the viability gap funding, we create a reserve which actually is at the, like a sector level. So, airport sector has a reserve account, and this is used to reimburse the guarantee. So we pay the subordinated debt as against the viability gap funding, and that the interest subvention. So interest subvention becomes the parameter which determines how say viability has to be supported. So people bid on the interest subvention on the viability gap funding which is required, and this is the interest subvention which is required from the government actually is something which is also paid off from the reserve which is being created. So in effect, the users are actually voting with their feet in a way for the projects that they are utilizing. So when we see that more and more, passengers are preferring to go the air traffic route, then we have a case where we can actually structure such a model. And the government is actually very, let's say, clearly involved in setting priorities, making sure the plans are there, policies are there, and the overall framework what needs to be, provided with the reimbursement of interest subvention or the, that is something which actually is what the government decides, rather than, getting into the actual execution of projects on EPC mode and getting into the design and getting into what specifications and how the raw materials are going to be sourced from all over the place. So I think this is one important thing which is actually required for states like Andhra Pradesh and states overall, because barring, I think, 3 states in the country, all the states are facing FRBM challenges. And if you see, from a high of about in 2011, when the states were actually contributing together 50% of the public finance to development projects, as against, and the center was also, sharing 50-50. Now the situation is that the center is actually contributing 80%, and the states are only contributing 20%, which is actually showing very poorly. And then you will have, the reliance on freebies that the politicians will actually have to, because all they can actually, they can't create assets. and they will have to really, so we can't really, so there is a structural situation we are trying to solve. We are also have basically enabled a framework for asset management. So for all of us actually look at only new asset creation. But there is so much of duplication which we can see around that, you know, on the coastal road itself, you will find that there are 3 levels of signage. I was actually coming, and you'll find that the assets are duplicated. You know, you got some money under some scheme, you got money on another scheme. You don't really see the asset management framework. The whole of, there will be, you know, energy efficient pumps which have come to a municipality. Now what will happen is the old pumps are still, you know, 3 years into the job, and they'll be, you know, now languishing. So I would have gone to about 73 large municipal corporations across the country, and I have found that, you know, they have 6 types of pumps which could have been utilized but are not being utilized. So Coimbatore has some 60 wards. Now each of these 60 wards has at least 3 pumps which are languishing and could be better utilized. So the asset, physical asset, you know, utilization management framework is very important from a flogging of, say, public assets standpoint. The final thing which I'm, of course, there are certain other things which I also have, but I think the final thing is, you know, really monetizing some of the assets we have. Because, you know, if you don't monetize, so I remember, you know, there's a town which used to be an industrial town in the Mughal era, was by the name of Burhanpur, like we have the Machilipatnam here. So that town actually today is having, say, only about, say, 25-30 crores, which it is right now, say, maybe the municipal revenues. But when we said that, you know, the assets that the municipal corporation had, and you have heard that, you know, ports, Rotterdam port is a municipal port, right? So the assets that we discovered in Burhanpur, you know, from the Mughal times, they actually, if they were, and they were all, you know, getting a rent of some 10 rupees or 15 rupees, or so the rents were not really updated at all. So if you don't manage your assets well, you know, the rentals from the shopping, the old market, which was a municipal market, which was actually allocated, you know, some 100 years ago or 150 years ago, nobody is actually basically taking note or basically, so the asset management, asset monetization is a very important thing, which actually can be used very effectively in states like Andhra Pradesh, so that, you know, if there are unattached, so if there are revenues which do not have associated expenses attached to them, then these can be very easily monetized for front-ending development, which we need a lot of, and that, I think, will possibly bring the states back on the keel for development finance.
So you've touched on a number of key points, and I'll come back to that after we hear from our last panelist, Mr. 𝐂𝐿 He's Chief Representative for �KEXIM Bank in India. So Mr. 𝐂𝐿, just based on your own experience at �KEXIM working in India, how do you see some of these issues, and what are some models and practices that could be adapted in India for infrastructure finance purposes?
Thank you. I'm not the chief. I'm a deputy chief of the representative office of �KEXIM. And thank you for having me in this meaningful discussion with ample ideas toward building up the touchstone for Andhra Pradesh development one step forward, and decent participants. Let me have this opportunity to introduce �KEXIM's various financing modalities. I believe it could be a good reference of case study for exploring blended financing model. �KEXIM
was established in 1976, and 1970s for Korea is a period in dynamics and rapid economic growth, driven by the acceleration of industrialization and shifting labor-intensive economy to heavy industry such as steel, shipbuilding, and machinery, electronics, etc. And this layoff development took place centered on the east coastal line of Korea, because Korea has the territorial nature of peninsular, just as India has the, it seems like bigger size of version of Korean Peninsular, and with the three sides, eastern, southern, western sides to face to sea. And Andhra Pradesh is one of the representative city located in the east coastal line. And this export-driven industrialization, supported by strong government intervention, have played a pivotal role in transforming Korea to the manufacturing power. In this period, 𝐾𝐿 role as a policy bank has expanded over the years, along with the Korean exports increase. So 𝐾𝐿's function is providing finance in the form of loan, guarantee, and investment. But we also operate multiple government-interested or facilitated funds. We've been interested in EDCF, Economic Development Cooperation Fund, which is the lending arm of Korea's ODA. And from 2017, we had started operating EDPF, Economic Development Promotion Facility, which is a quasi-concessional lending arm of Korea's ODA as well. From 2024, we operate PDIF, that is Private Sector Investment Development Facility, as we play a role as a development finance institution of Korea. And recently, we started to make meaningful performance and results in collaboration with JBIC and DFC. At the same year, we have been interested again by Korean government, SCRF, Supply Chain Resilience Fund, to cope with the paradigm shift of global economy facing the reshuffling of the global supply chain. So over the years, 𝐾𝐿 evolved from ECA to ODA provider or comprehensive DFI. With 𝐾𝐿, cooperation with partner and institutions and partner countries is very important, because large-scale projects requires risk sharing among the financial institutions. Blended finance enhances competitiveness by reducing the all-in cost, and joint initiative contribute to supply chain resilience or sustainable growth. And in India, projects are typically initiated by state governments like Andhra Pradesh. So upstream support and technical support is essential. So collaboration between 𝐾𝐿 and other advanced institutions like international organization and DFI can catalyze our blended finance model. So this holistic approach ensure risk sharing, cost efficiency, and alignment with Korea and our partner country, both nations and institutions' priority.
Thank you very much. So we don't have too much time left. What I'm going to do is first, give my own remarks. And I'd actually prepared a presentation, but as you know, we have a very different format. I'd like to touch upon some points that I think link up with my original presentation and what we've heard. The first thing is incentives. You know, when I hear about look, it's a very good point several people have made. It's not just an issue of the public sector or private sector. The key is, what are your incentives? And there, I think, you know, exports. You know, when I've looked at the Korean experience or the Chinese experience, Japan's experience, one of the things that really simplifies decision-making is that you have a focus on exports. And if your goods are not going to be of good quality or delivered on time, nobody's making any money. And so, you know, that's one thing to be said about the export-oriented model. In fact, I remember we actually had a study on, you know, Korea's planning process, and it's very simple. You export from ports, you set up industrial parks near the ports, you ensure that the power shortage of power supply is first met to the ports, and so you get this sequence. Now, we don't have that luxury, of course, in India. It's a very different geography, it's a different model, but until we tackle this incentives problem, I think we have a challenge on this. But in that same token, 2 points, you know, Andhra Pradesh, I mean, this is really a great place for port-led development. And I think the logistics issues all become easier, and we see a state government which is very interested in innovating. A couple of other points that I'd like to just tie in now. You know, this point was made about asset monetization. Several speakers have made this point. And I'd like to just give one example where I think so much more can be done. It's on land value capture. And essentially, you know, we did a study on Bengaluru Metro. We were involved in the part funding of the Bangalore Metro, and we did a very detailed cost-benefit analysis using a very sophisticated spatial model of the entire city of Bangalore. The interesting thing is that the costs of the project, they're basically engineering function. It's the benefits. And it was very interesting. We basically looked at what the town country planning department had set for Bangalore 2031. And, you know, they were talking about taking the inner, all the area inside the inner ring road and basically saying, look, this is not going to be commercial. Commercial has to go outside. And in fact, in our simulations, we found that the floor area restrictions around stations and this sort of land use planning was associated with a negative 14% hit to city GDP. In contrast, almost a 16% increase in city GDP results when you have, you know, world-class TOD type of frameworks. In other words, transport investments have to be very dovetailed with urban planning. And I think this is one thing that's extremely important from the urban agenda that we've heard about. Unless we tackle some of the land conversion, the land zoning, the building bylaws, the setbacks, et cetera, and really do a detailed cost-benefit analysis of why they are the way they are, we're going to continue to be really underutilizing this. I want to now get into user charges. Time is running out, but this issue of user charges that you raised, and you also tied it to freebies, it's a very serious one. We're going to see the 16th Finance Commission report, you know, unveiled in maybe a month or a few months. But I think this is something that the Finance Commission has been really dealing with, this issue of freebies. And whichever data you assemble, it is a bit alarming to see the untargeted subsidies going up. And you know, we've seen RBI had some excellent analysis some years ago where they looked at just capital expenditures and what happens, you know, when the state budget gets scrunched, and the capital expenditure obviously has to come down. So I want to just end with the last point, which is on user charges. This is where, you know, it's very interesting. When we look at the household consumption expenditure data, you see very clearly free electricity is actually going to a lot of the higher income quintiles who can afford it. And that's certainly a group that can actually afford these user charges. Why are states so worried about raising? Now, of course, there's a political economy angle, but I think one thing that we, you know, different institutions here could really do is conduct some very thorough willingness to pay surveys. I would not be surprised if actually a lot of people, if they're assured of high quality service delivery, would be willing to pay. And I think, we've seen that with the airports. That's a very high end of the market, but I would not be surprised if something similar is there at the lower end. So I see the big red flag, time's up. Thank all our panelists. I wish we had more time for a second round of questions, but it is what it is. Thank you very much.